This is a talk about species flocks in the sea, and there's a lot of people involved. Okay, big team here. I just want to point out today, Steve Carl, who passed recently, and Jack Randall, who turned 95 last week, and he's still describing species. He's described more species than Linnaeus, okay? And he's still going, all right? I also want to point out that after I made arrangements to be at this meeting, somebody pointed out that there was a Grateful Dead concert in Foxborough on Saturday night, right? So I said, sure. What's the chances I got to talk first thing Sunday morning? That's why I'm deeply suspicious of the laws of probability. Okay, let's have at it. I'm going to point out a few features of marine evolution, tell you what a species flock is, terrestrial and marine species flock. The important point that I want to bring home is intrinsic versus extrinsic opportunity, which is sometimes species flocks occur because of a trait of the organism, that's intrinsic, and sometimes it's external circumstances, all sorts of ecological opportunity. Harris, would you sit down for Christ's sakes? Where? I don't care.
I have to be able to see you.
No, you don't. Okay.
All right.
Here's a key feature. Extremely high dispersal. These marine critters go out there for weeks or months. And another key feature is that there's biodiversity hotspots, like the coral triangle. There's 3,000 fish species in this area. By the time you get to Hawaii, it's 500. By the time you get to Rapa Nui, it's 130. And most important, because this occurs in everything from cowies to corals to fish, there has to be a unifying evolutionary process, okay, that acts on all of these taxonomic groups. Okay, what's a species flock? Well, the primary features that you get in the literature are, first of all, it's got to be a flock, confined to some geographic region, and the cladists are telling us you got to be monophyletic, which I don't strictly adhere to. Like in Hawaii, it could be a product of 2 or 3 colonizations, but there you have it. Ecologically diverse, usually dominant and abundant, numerous speciation events close together in time, and the first person to actually talk about species flocks was actually Charles Darwin. Okay. So where do these species flocks occur? Oceanic islands. Well, I'm from Hawaii. We know all about this. Ancient lakes, Antarctica, and I'm not going to have time to talk about boreal young lakes, but maybe if anybody has a question about it. Okay, so here's some examples of species flocks in Hawaii. Terrestrial species flocks. They're all over the place. You can't throw a rock without hitting a species flock in Hawaii. 400 species of moths, honey creepers, passerine birds, 55 species from a single colonization event. Okay, above the waterline, loads of species flocks. Let's go below the waterline. Well, we got limpets with 3 species, okay? You're not getting species flocks in the ocean. They're very rare, okay? So where do species flocks occur? Y'all probably know about Lake Tanganyika. I think Axel Meyer's talking maybe today about these species flocks. And the important point here is that what got into Lake Tanganyika in the last 8 or 9 million years, not just these cichlids. There's species flocks in a bunch of stuff, okay? They're clustered in this region. Okay, let's go to Lake Baikal in Russia, the oldest and largest lake. Yeah, sculpins got in there, 33 species in the last couple of million years. But look at this, okay? Amphipods, species flock, copepods, gastropods, all species flocks. So, like the coral triangle, you got to say there's got to be a unifying evolutionary process here because it applies across a bunch of taxonomic groups. And in the ocean, it's Antarctica. That's where you have species flocks in a bunch of different species. And it's not a lake that got colonized by a few individuals, but it got colonized by the individuals that can live in 2 degrees below zero. And they prospered. Bunch of species flocks. Okay, so like the coral triangle, if there's a unifying evolutionary process, why are there species flocks in the coral triangle, Antarctica? There's got to be a unifying evolutionary process. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. So what is the role of adaptive radiations in the sea? It's everywhere, but species flocks are rare outside of Antarctica. And I'm saying this because of that huge dispersal that most of these organisms have. Okay, adaptations, individuals here, gobies, that switch their coral habitat from one coral host to another. Sure, you get speciation, sympatric speciation, but it's bifurcations. You don't get 30 species or 100 species. Okay, so here's the exceptions. Conus snails in Cape Verde, okay? Conus snails occur all over the world, but in Cape Verde, there's 47 species. And unlike the conus snails elsewhere, they're direct developers. Okay, hopefully you're starting to see a theme here. The rockfish in the East Pacific, 65 species. Gee, they skip the larval stage. Viviparous, they spit out live young. Okay, the groupers, the hamlets, I'm not sure what, but vermeted gastropods in Hawaii. Every one of these species, there's 3 or 4 species, and every one of them, thanks to Anucha Fauci, has multiple evolutionary lineages. And gee, they don't have the pelagic larval stage. They're crawl-away larvae. Okay, live in corals, cement themselves to corals. They don't move too far. And the remarkable thing about these guys, here's just one of the species of tube snails. There's at least 3 deep cryptic evolutionary lineages, and the breaks between them correspond to the lava flows, okay, that produce the same bifurcations and multiple evolutionary divergences in the terrestrial snails, the ones that live above the waterline, okay? So, you've got a terrestrial form of reproduction, and that gives you a terrestrial kind of species flock. It's the few examples that there are in the sea. When they reproduce like terrestrial species, in other words, they don't have a pelagic larval stage, they don't drift around for weeks or months, then you start seeing in individual species, tube snails in Hawaii, conus in Cape Verde. The important thing is here is that Cape Verde isn't a bunch of different species flocks, like Lake Tanganyika, okay? It's just an individual group. They happen to pop up and radiate like crazy. Same with the tube snails in Hawaii. Hawaii doesn't have a bunch of species flocks above the waterline. I mean, below the waterline. They have these guys with the crawl-away larvae. So I think it's pretty clear low dispersal is the key, okay? So here's the punchline. Adaptive radiations in the sea are usually bifurcations. Terrestrial species flocks, like we see in Hawaii. Ecological opportunity galore, right? It's an oceanic island that pops up in the middle of the North Pacific. If you get there, opportunity galore. And there's usually a little physical isolation, like those lava flows. Okay, those freshwater species flocks. Again, they get ecological opportunity, and they seem to have some level of reproductive isolation. It might be behavioral, all right? I only mate with the ones that look like me. But in the marine realm, it's a lot harder. There's huge dispersal, And so you have to meet the higher threshold of sympatric speciation in order to get some kind of flock action going, okay? 2, non-exclusive evolutionary pathways. The amazing thing is, after I kind of started thinking about this, I found out that George Gaylord Simpson figured it out way before me. And then, yeah, Moises, was that you heckling me? Intrinsic traits of a single organismal group, terrestrial mode of reproduction, okay? They don't have huge dispersal. That's an intrinsic opportunity specific to that group, and they get a species flock. Then there's extrinsic traits, like a lake opens up with huge ecological opportunities, and it isn't just a single group that goes flock. It's a bunch of different taxonomic groups, okay? These are geographically scattered around the ocean. These are geographically tightly focused, okay? And with that, I'll take questions. Harris, you gonna let me stand up here?
I don't agree with anything you say.
Well, that's what I'm looking for.
Ecological opportunity is fine, but that assumes that the speciation engine can fill on demand what the environment permits. Right?
Unfilled niches. Ecologists hate the term unfilled niches.
I hate it too, yeah.
Well, there we have it. Okay, but if you open up a lake and you give it 10 million years, the rare colonists that get in there, what are they going to do? They're going to radiate.
If they have crawl-away library, and if the one genotype doesn't fill the whole lake, and if it doesn't outcompete everybody else.
Okay, but the ice fish, they have a larval stage that drifts around for a couple months, and yet they radiate like crazy.
So could it be that because of the ocean is so big relative to a lake, when you look for endemism, you cannot just look in a small area. You have to look at a whole ocean.
You have to go ocean basin-wide.
Yeah.
Wow, so you reviewed that paper?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
I swear.
That's why I went for major revision. How was you?
I did not review it, I promise.
All right, I think the bird's about to chirp. Thank you for coming out this early. And by the way, thanks for